Hey, welcome to What is Your Exam Plan? A Google Hangout on exam planning from the Healthy Campus Unit. Today we have Dr. Mebbie Bell from the Student Success Centre here to help you have the best finals yet. I'm going to start off by telling you a little bit about us here at the Healthy Campus Unit for those of you who don't know already, and then I will hand it over to Mebbie. So the Healthy Campus Unit is a health promotion team here at the U of A made up of student staff, volunteers, and 2 full-time staff members. Our work comes from the understanding that our well-being is directly linked and is essential to student success. We also believe that the environment around us, where we study, work, and live, play an important role in our well-being. We use health promotion strategies to encourage members from all over campus to work together in creating a healthier campus community. Some of the programs that our unit organizes are Wellness Grants, Unwind Your Mind, which has started today, and Wellness Champions, which we are currently taking nominations for. We also coordinate the National College Health Assessment, which is a survey looking at student health on campus. And those are just a few of our initiatives. This Google Hangout is one of the ways we are working with partners across campus to support student well-being. The Google Hangout will be archived and part of Unwind Your Mind in the future. All right, so now on to Dr. Mebbie Bell. She is the Associate Dean of Director of Learning Resources at the UofA Student Success Centre. She works with undergraduate and graduate students to help them maximize their study strategies and exam performance. And today she is here to help all of you. So welcome, Mebbie.
Thank you. Thanks, Alicia. And welcome, everyone. If you've seen a copy of our exam plan handout, I wanted to mention that the themes I'm going to go through today are on the page that's entitled, What is Your Exam Plan? But even if you've never seen it, that's totally fine. You can create your own plan for each of your exams or an overall plan for your exams by thinking about what stands out for you, what components of exams are working, which you get frustrated with, and building your plan from there. My goal today is to give you a whole range of different things to consider when prepping for your exams. So there's going to be lots of ideas, and I'll hopefully talk for 15 or 20 minutes, and then we'll have time for some questions. Look for the ideas that stand out for you, and then adapt them to fit your own circumstances. That's really how strategies work best, when you sort of rework them to your own situation. And also, I'd consider thinking about areas you haven't created plans for in the past. Maybe there's a gap. Overall exam success is really always a bit of a balancing act, and each exam will be slightly different, as you know from your own experience. But you already have lots of skills to build on. Hopefully what we talk about today will simply give you more options for finding this balance between sort of the knowledge component, exam format components, and your skill with different exam formats, and some exam management techniques. We usually focus on the knowledge component, and in the rush of things, forget about the psychological component. So hopefully that gets fleshed out for you today. As you're starting to study, I'd encourage you to take a little bit of time, just a very little bit of time, to create a plan for each of your exams. Could be an overall plan as well. Everything you do in advance helps set you up to succeed. This is about being as strategic as possible with your content, practicing your formats, incorporating all of the different components of your plan into your studying from day one means that you'll be much more comfortable with them as you go along. And one of the really key things, and I'll probably end up saying this more than once, is that you want to think about, you want to really think about sticking to your routines. It's very easy to start staying up a little bit later and that kind of stuff, but if you sleep and exercise and eat the way you usually do, you'll be in a better place going into the unpredictability and stress of exams. So you want everything else to be really boring. Think through all the different aspects of exam preparation, and there's really nothing that's too small to consider. So on this slide about the day or so before an exam, you want to think about doing something the night before, the day before to de-stress, whatever it is that would work for you, and really resist that urge to study late into the night. It will just add to your stress. Think of anything that can help you reduce the stress the day of the exam as well. So pack things up the night before and make sure you know exactly where you're going, especially if it's a new building on campus. Go and check it out a couple of days before. You do need to be a little selfish, and this is selfish to benefit yourself. If there's someone, maybe it's a friend who you adore, but they're a little bit stressful to be around in exam time, just make plans to meet up with them after exams or after that particular class that you share with them. So plan to be antisocial if that's something that starts to bother you during exams. Also think about that period of time right before the exam starts. If that's a time that causes you a lot of stress, that's a time when you should pull up your hood, put in your earbuds, or even go and hide in a bathroom cubicle to stay away from people if you don't want to talk to them. It's okay to be a little selfish at that point. You also want to have a plan for the whole exam period itself, and I'm sure lots of you have already have your own strategies. So it's about making sure you're covering all your bases or finding some more strategies for periods of time that you find you get really stressed out with. It's sort of like having a toolbox, and the more tools you have in that toolbox, the more strategies you have for your exam, so to speak, the better off you'll be. So when you go in, the first thing is always to, as soon as that exam starts, flip through the exam and make sure it's what you were expecting. Hopefully you will have asked as many questions as possible in advance, but when you flip through that exam, is it what you're expecting? How many questions are there? What formats? What weighting? If you weren't given that information in advance, write down a quick overview of that to keep yourself on track and come up with a quick time plan then. If you have any questions as you're going through the exam, and there's really not a question that's too small, ask it as soon as it comes up. I think that's really important. If you want to wait until a break or a time when you're moving on to a new section, just jot it on some scrap paper at the corner of your exam so that you can keep track of those questions. Also have some rough plan of how to manage your time through the exam. I know lots of students will know how many minutes they have for each question, or you might like to organize it by section. It's not that you have to match that plan perfectly, but that you've thought out how you're going to organize and manage that time based on the types of questions, difficulty level, weighting, and importance, and perhaps even your stress level with certain types of questions or certain types of content. I'd also include micro breaks or little mini breaks throughout your exam. Maybe it's at the end of each page or whenever you're starting to feel stressed, just take a deep breath, have a sip of water, close your eyes for a few seconds. And in a very long exam, I know some students on campus are writing exams that might be 4 or more hours. Really think about planning when you're going to have a longer break, a bathroom break, for instance, or even just a few minutes where you close your eyes and relax. And we'll talk about some relaxation strategies a little later on. In terms of dealing with distractions, I think one thing that's really important is putting the anxiety question on the table. Everyone experiences exam anxiety, and as your exam anxiety goes up, or any kind of anxiety, you're going to be more distracted. And this manifests itself in many different ways during exams. Sometimes it's that you feel like your mind is racing, or you might have physiological symptoms of stress. So your heart is pounding, your throat or mouth might be dry. You might have difficulty focusing. And as that anxiety goes up and the distractions go up, all of the things that you need to do really effectively in an exam associated with higher order thinking, reading accuracy, reading, interpretation, analysis, can all be impacted. So you want some strategies to deal with your distractions. It's a really personal thing, but I have this list of different ideas. So you probably have tried 1 or 2 of these, and there's some more options here. If you have a choice of where to sit, pick your favorite seat, obviously, or sit somewhere strategic. It might be that you like to be on an aisle, or you really don't like to be on an aisle, or you would rather be by a wall. If you have a choice, arrive early so that you can get the seat that you want. If you wear earplugs when you study, I'd really encourage you to wear them in exams. About 40 to 50% of students are wearing earplugs in exams. You will hear everything that you need to hear, and you can tell the exam proctors that you're wearing them. But don't wear them for the first time in an exam, because that might cause you just additional stress. Test them out, decide whether you like them. If you feel a little claustrophobic in exams, I'd encourage you to try to visualize having space around you. Some students will do a little visualization exercise where they imagine they're pulling a heavy curtain around them. For this reason, some students like to sit on an aisle or in the first row or against a wall because they feel less constrained by people. I mentioned this a bit before, but also unpleasant people can be a distraction. So maybe that person you loved sitting by throughout the whole course because you like talking to them, they get really jittery around exams. Maybe you just have to tell them you're not going to sit with them during the exam and you'll meet up with them afterwards. Some people have a lot of what they call sort of random thoughts going through their head as they get stressed around exam time. And there are a couple of different distraction writing strategies that you can use. You can either take a few minutes and write everything that you're thinking about before the exam starts, or jot down those distracting thoughts as you write. Some of you may have heard of this one, a fidget ring. They're little rubber rings that you can wear that you play with during an exam. You could also just bring in an extra eraser to play with. And if there's any distracting students, and by that I mean people who are talking, trying to talk to you, trying to get you to talk to them, immediately put up your hand and let the supervisor take care of it. It's their job. It's something that you don't have to deal with, and it's a really significant distraction. Think about what's going to help you get through the exam. During the exam itself, you want to be strategic. All of your decisions should be logical and rational, and you should be making them on the basis of things that are going to set yourself up to perform at your absolute best. It is a performance situation. One thing that seems a bit contradictory in this regard is that you really need to not think about the grade you're going to get. It causes you stress during the exam, and it is a bit counterintuitive. And during the term, I encourage all students to know exactly what's going on with their grades. When you walk in that exam room, though, your goal is to focus on one question at a time and answer one question at a time to the best of your ability. You have no control over how the exam is being graded, and focusing on that grade often just causes you stress. So focus on the things that you do have control over that will help you get through the exam successfully. So one is called the 80% rule, and this is just a general guideline that helps you deal strategically with the things you don't know and give as much energy, time, focus to the things that you do know. In general, this was devised because most exams are written so that if we were all equally prepared, most of us would know the majority of the material, or 75 to 80%. What happens when we feel overwhelmed, or sometimes we hit a couple of questions we don't know, is we start to race through things and we end up doing everything poorly instead of focusing on that stuff that we know and doing it to our best ability. In every single exam you've ever written, that there's material you know and there was material that you didn't know or that was presented in a new way. So you want to strategically prepare and think about that material as you're going forward to your exams. You also, of course, need a plan for that nasty stuff that you don't know, and it will always be there. So I think you come up with as many plans as possible. Each different kind of exam will have different ones that are appropriate, so some of these will be quite general. But each exam format has different ways that you can guess strategically. So think through what would be a logical or reasonable plan for guessing in your exam. Think about whether there are penalties for guessing, whether you can include partial responses, and that's certainly something we can talk about more in questions if you would like information about specific formats. When we're stuck in exams, often what's going on is the stress hormones, the adrenaline, are actually making it difficult for us to think. So it's really important to start writing your ideas out. Physically writing with pencil and paper helps to externalize that thought process and sort of helps you get unstuck. It helps activate those ideas that you're trying to work with. Another variation on this is to reword questions for yourself or response choices. Actually just quickly jot them down, paraphrase them for yourself. This becomes a translation, so it's also a way to double check whether your comprehension of the question is correct. And I'd encourage you to rewrite symbols and numbers in particular. We're awful at reading them. So rewrite them to make sure that you're reading them correctly. You can also do things like go over numbers or a difficult passage backward. It won't make sense, but it will help you catch the reading errors that we make in exams. And the most common errors most of us make are reading errors. Also, double check your facts and what I call non-facts. So these aren't the facts of your questions, but the in-between words. Negative phrasing in particular, we're very, very poor at reading. So double check that there aren't any negatives in any of the response choices that you're dealing with. If you're in a problem-solving discipline or had to describe a long process, count your steps. That in the stress of an exam, we can skip a step and not be aware of it. Diagramming or redrawing any of your course materials will also help activate your memory. If none of this is working, just move on. Come back to it and review. Don't waste too much time on what you don't know, because that's taking away time for you giving really excellent answers in the material you do know. In terms of dealing with your anxiety, there's 4 general areas where the strategies are available for you. The first one, and we do this because of adrenaline, we do not breathe well in exams. So we take short little breaths. So as soon as you start to feel stressed, take a really deep diaphragmatic breath that makes your belly move, and tell yourself you're going to be calm and focus on the exam and doing your best. You can also visualize something that helps you stay calm and focused, or you can tense and relax different muscle groups. That's called progressive relaxation. So that's easily done in an exam chair, and I call it the exam hunch. After hours of writing, you know, when you're bent over your paper, your neck and your shoulders are stiff, even sitting up, taking a deep breath, and rolling your shoulders around a little bit or dropping your head for a moment can relieve a lot of the tension. Productive self-talk is something that some of us actually need to work at developing. You want to replace any negative self-talk or berating of yourself or beating yourself up in an exam with something much more useful for the exam situation. If these strategies don't work or you're having difficulty with them, I'd also encourage you to get professional help at the Counseling Centre or at the Success Centre, because there are lots of different ways to develop this. Self-talk is really personal, but I just wanted to share some options. It could be that you tell yourself one question at a time, or stick to the facts. I know my stuff. Stay calm and focused. You could try some of these out, or you could think of what perhaps a trusted friend or mentor or family member would tell you if they were sitting there right beside you in the exam coaching you through. Or what would you tell a friend? Think about that. Sometimes that can help you come up with the right thing. As you're doing your studying, write different options on Post-its, put them up around where you study, and you'll know when you've hit the right one. It will just automatically come to mind when you're trying to be calm. Anytime in your exam preparations that you feel stressed, even when you're not in the exam, take a deep breath and tell yourself this productive message. It might be that deep breath and you say, okay, I'm going to stick to the facts. I know my stuff. The more you practice that, the faster it will work for you in the exam. It's setting up a biofeedback loop that helps you stay calm and focused and actually tells you a productive message for connecting with your exam plan. We've gone over a lot of things pretty quickly, but hopefully a number of things stood out for you personally, and I'd encourage you to start writing out that exam plan. When you get into your exam room, what you can do, and many students find this useful, is to write 3 or 4 key points from their exam plan in the corner of their exam. Then when they start to feel a little stressed, they take that deep breath and they go up to that corner and they walk themselves through their exam plan. They're planning to stay calm, stick with their plan, and get through their exam successfully. So start working on your own exam plan, and good luck with those exams. Let's see if we have any questions.
Great. Yes, we've gotten a couple questions here. So the first question we got was, what happens when I start slipping from my exam plan? When I get behind, I usually just throw away my whole schedule. How do I avoid this?
I think it's, especially because of the stress of the exam period, it's really tempting to just say it's not working and throw it out. One bad day doesn't mean all of your exam planning is toast. So if you're getting really stressed, actually taking an afternoon or an evening off isn't a bad thing. You're not being lazy or undisciplined. So allow yourself to take that night off. One of my colleagues says we need to do really productive procrastination. So really enjoy your time off. You know, eat all those potato chips, go for a long run, watch 2 more episodes of Netflix, whatever it is that you're doing. And then the next morning, know that you've actually benefited yourself by de-stressing and focus on your plan again. Remember too that there'll always be that desire to have more time than you actually have. So be strategic in the time that you have. If you say I have a 2-hour chunk to work on this, pick the highest impact strategies that you can, and know that then you've done your best in that period of time.
Great. Okay, another question we got is about staying up late. So it says, I know that sleep is the most important thing during exams, but I always find that I don't get enough studying done the night before, and I feel like I have no choice but to stay awake and keep studying. What should I do?
You should go to sleep. I know it's easier said than done, but I will always give you the advice to go to sleep at your regular time rather than study more. It is actually the most studied aspect of university exam performance at any level, and the findings are dead consistent. If we stay up 2 hours later, or even if we get up, say, an hour and a half, 2 hours earlier to get in some more studying, what happens is our brain interprets it as a crisis and it starts producing stress hormones before we even are ready for it. So all of this stress is going through your body, and that actually impedes your ability to do all the things you need in an exam. So even if you don't feel perfectly prepared, I'd rather have you going in with your wits about you, better prepared to deal with stress, to read accurately, to interpret information, to apply what you do know really, really well, to make great decisions, to stay calm and rational. And having your regular night's sleep will do that for you. And anything you can do, even if it's 30 minutes here or 20 minutes there, anything you can do in advance, those 20 and 30-minute blocks count. You don't need that perfect big block to do your studying. So even, you know, if you don't feel you've got everything done, maybe it's an extra half hour a few days before and an hour a couple of days before that. It all counts.
Great. Okay, another question we got regarding multiple choice exams. Do you have any tips for questions that are none of the above, all of the above, and have 2 of the above in the answers?
Yes, if we were in a classroom, I'd be able to draw this out for you, but there's a specific technique for breaking down what I call combination questions. And so those are the ones with none of the above, all of the above, or some other combination. So in those multiple choice, you have your response choices that are standalone. They're not the combinations, and then you have the combinations. So those are the 2 parts that you need to deal with. So deal with the standalone options first, and treat each of them as a true-false statement. So read them with the question and answer true or false. And if you can answer true or false to all of the standalone questions, you look for the combination choice in the other part of your options that matches the true-false pattern. If you can't answer true-false in those standalone choices, you will never be able to figure out the combinations. So set it aside and come back to it in review. Often when we have really complex combinations, they're the questions that can eat up all kinds of time. When you have a few more minutes left in the review, hopefully you can work through it. And sometimes I'm sure you've had that experience where the stress drops and then you're able to remember that key fact that helps you get through the question.
Okay, I think we'll have time for one last question. Okay, so this question asks, I have 3 exams in 2 days. one at 9 a.m., 2 p.m., and 2 p.m. the next day. Is it okay to study for my last one the week before, or should I be studying for my last one a few days right before the exam?
Well, the way your brain cognitively processes the information is totally fine, and I always encourage studying far in advance. But the way your brain processes the information is you actually want frequent, smaller study blocks for all of your materials. So maybe the couple of days before, you might be really focused on the first day with the 9 a.m. and the 2 p.m. But even if it's half an hour, maybe half an hour each day for that third exam, where you go back to the materials you intensively studied and you just flip through. Or maybe you review concept maps, or you do 15 minutes of sandwich bag quizzing or comparison quizzing or something like that. That 15 minutes will pull that material back into your conscious memory, which actually helps you build more resilient memory pathways for the information. So I like your plan of doing one course really far in advance, but keep flipping through that material, even just 15 or 20 minutes a day up until that exam. What you're doing is you're refreshing that material. Especially if it's practice questions, you're confirming your knowledge. You'll feel more confident about the material. And you're not leaving everything to the last minute. So you won't feel like you've been away from it for weeks at a time. You're literally, every time you go back, giving your brain an opportunity to grow new neural pathways associated with that material, even if it's a quick 15-minute flip through materials you worked on 2 weeks ago.
Great. All right, so I think that's all the time we have for questions. Thank you, everyone, for submitting your questions. I just wanted to say a big thank you to Mebbie for helping us with exam planning. I think those tips will really help students get through their exam time. And I wanted to thank all of you for joining us. If you have any other questions that weren't answered, you can always email us at wellness@ualberta.ca, and you can contact us on Facebook. Thanks.